Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. And another heavyweight news mashup video today, starting with Anthony Joshua, who's again been talking Tyson Fury, his domestic rival in the United Kingdom, both champions at the moment, squaring off at some point, hopefully, for a showdown that the heavyweight division is really looking forward to and needs, in my view, given the dearth of big fights. But hopefully, inside the next year or so, we're going to get that fight. But he's spoken to GQ magazine saying, let's talk about him as a boxer. I don't find him intimidating, and I haven't seen him do anything in the ring where I think this guy is going to be a massive threat. He's talented and he's awkward, and that's often enough to get you quite far in life. I'm like a Jekyll and Hyde type of person with it. On one side, I believe I can elevate myself to a different level through being the Anthony Joshua I want the world to see. But on the other hand, I'm a real person. I make mistakes. I'm not perfect. I'm trying though. I really am. I'm working on myself every day. And of his upcoming fight with Kubrat Pulev, which is set to be on December the 12th, not formally announced, but that's a working date at this point at the O2 in London, he says, I'm okay with the delay, to be honest. It saved me weeks of getting punched in the head, and that can never be a bad thing. And remembering Joshua and Kubrat Pulev originally was talked about for June 2020 and has been subsequently pushed back because of the pandemic. And during that pandemic period, Joshua was also suffering from a left knee injury, and that's some of what he's referring to then about being saved from getting punched in the head over several weeks. But he is back in training now. The American heavyweight Michael Hunter, who's previously fought Alexander Povetkin to a draw, says that he believes a rematch between Povetkin and Dillian Whyte is going to be too soon if it's held in November. He says, I think it's a little too soon for him to have a rematch. I think it would be a good idea to take some time off. He can get that fight back. He has enough clout and notoriety to fight another fight, get mentally strong, let the wounds heal, then go back to war with Povetkin. But he goes on to say that's not to say he can't put a band-aid on it or be stronger than before, but it's a wound, it's an open cut. Depending on his energy, depends on how healed he is from the situation. And they are talking about that fight for November 14 or 21st, so it remains to be seen what will happen and when that rematch will occur. But Dillian Whyte is back out in Portugal training, so he is gearing up to run this straight back. What are your thoughts on that? Is it going to be too soon if it happens in November? If it was pushed out, would that make much of a difference? Let me know your views on that. Meanwhile, David Haye is hoping that Alexander Usyk and Derek Chisora, their fight can go ahead at the end of October because he's hoping it can be a birthday present for him.
October seems to be the most likely date. For me, that's great. Derek's in a good place mentally. He's physically even better. So this is the perfect time. Tomorrow we sit down and plan out all of the training, the periodization of his training, making sure he's going to peak in October. And for me, that'll be the greatest birthday present ever. I'm 40 on the 13th of October. So Derek Chisora knocking out Usyk will be the best birthday present ever.
The rising British heavyweight Joyce is seemingly annoyed that Daniel Dubois is calling out other fighters and not his name, despite the fact that they are scheduled to fight in October. So in recent weeks, in the lead up to Daniel Dubois' fight against Ricardo Schneiders on August the 29th, Dubois was calling out the likes of Dillian Whyte. And after that fight, after he rose to number 2 in the WBO rankings, above Joseph Parker, going up the 1 spot, he was calling out the number 1 rated contender in the WBO, Alexander Usyk, who is currently the mandatory. So if that belt became vacant, Dubois now in line to fight against Usyk for it. So Joyce seemingly, though, is saying, hang on, I don't like this. Saying on social media, keep hearing my opponent call out every fighter in the division, ... Don't plan anything but your comeback fight at your call, Triple D. #the Juggernaut. So those two are scheduled to fight in October, but there is some doubt about whether it will go ahead if fans cannot be in attendance, and that's a financial call, as Frank Warren has put it, that will be made at some point. A fight between unbeaten New Zealand heavyweight Junior Fa and his domestic rival in New Zealand, Joseph Parker, looks very close to being made, with Junior Fa telling New Zealand media, "We're going into the finer details, making sure there is no grey area in the contract. We just want to make sure everything is airtight. So it's me versus him. I think the first time we fought was back in 2009. The last time we fought was in 2012 before the Olympic trials." And just to clarify there, if you didn't know, Junior Fa and Joseph Parker have a rivalry going back to the amateurs, fighting 4 times, splitting it 2 apiece. He continues, "COVID had different plans, but that put away a few fights I had planned for this year to build myself up. But we are here now. I've got to make the best of it. I want to train as hard as I can and then give myself the best chance to beat Joseph Parker. I know a lot of eyes are on me. I've got to get down and do the work and put on a great performance." And there has been some recent reports suggesting that the finer details that are being haggled over include the brand of gloves and that they have to wear the same gloves. So it is really getting down to the nitty-gritty. It is a fight that will generate some interest. How much interest, it remains to be seen. But as David Higgins, Joseph Parker's advisor, has said, they're making the best of a bad situation. The American heavyweight Jerry Forrest has been further suspended by the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and this follows a failed drug test. So a July 3 sample tested positive for cannabidiol. So we'll have to see what the commission does here and if this will be challenged and if this falls into the recreational side of things. I don't know all the ins and outs, but we'll see what the commission does and where this ends up falling. But clearly not a good look, and the irony with this situation is that Forrest, who was originally meant to face Jarrell Miller on July 10th, Miller failed a drug test. He was out of that fight. A standard opponent, Carlos Takam, comes in. Forrest loses to Takam and now has failed a drugs test, and that sample from July 3, but it was not discovered until after the fight. And Alen Babich has ripped into Filip Hrgovic after Hrgovic was named in a tune-up fight, his first fight for 2020, against a guy who had been retired professionally at least for the past 6 years, Andre Pala. So Babich, who is also Croatian and has had a bit of beef with Filip Hrgovic and recently called Hrgovic out after his own win over Shawndell Winters on August the 22nd, says, "I don't care about their comments. Right now, Hrgovic is fighting a guy who hasn't been training for 6 years. For me, that's a disgrace," and these comments made to Sky Sports. "I would never fight a guy like that. In England, my fans love me, so if the fans want to see this fight, it will happen. Of course, I need a couple more fights, I know, but those comments like, I'm nothing, that's their way." He said I was going to lose to Tom Little and Dave Alen. Tom Little is a great guy, I love him, but there's no way I'll lose. That shows how much they don't know about boxing. Just talking rubbish. I just beat Shawndell Winters, who was much tougher, my first serious opponent, but that means nothing to them. Just tell Sauerland to watch my fight because he obviously doesn't know who he's talking about. I really dislike Hrgovic. I want to shut his mouth because he's a bully. He was born with a silver spoon, so I don't expect him to appreciate me. Eddie Hearn says he's my fan, so who is Hrgovic to say anything? I'm a true modern-day gladiator. And Alen Babich obviously has less than 5 fights on the ledger, Shawndell Winters being the best of his wins. At this point, I think many would expect Filip Hrgovic to beat him, and handily enough. But at some point, obviously, when they both have a bit more seasoning under their belt, I wouldn't mind seeing that fight, but I think Alen Babich has got to prove that he deserves it, because his level of competition, while he's slagging off Hrgovic's, which, you know, that Andre Pala tune-up is, it is terrible. I mean, both these guys have not really fought the best competition in the division yet, so, I mean, sort of slagging each other off for tune-ups is somewhat ironic. But what do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.